Welcome to Inspiring Women in Audit, the only podcast celebrating the achievements and journeys of women in the internal audit industry. In each episode, we spotlight the extraordinary stories, insights, and expertise of these dynamic professionals. Our aim is to amplify their voices, inspiring a new generation of women auditors to share their knowledge, experiences, and unique perspectives. Remember to check our show notes for links to our social media channels and to subscribe to the Inspiring Women in Audit newsletter. This podcast is brought to you by I4 Global Results Limited, the audit communication experts dedicated to transforming your audit reporting and your audit results through communication, optimization, and collaboration. Now, let's dive into this episode of Inspiring Women in Audit.
I'm excited to have Karen Albert as my guest today on the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. Karen is Vice President and Head of Internal Audit at Constellium, a global leader in value-added aluminum products. With more than 25 years in internal audit risk and advisory roles across banking, manufacturing, and Big Four consulting, Karen brings a deep blend of operational, IT, and strategic insights to the profession. Karen also serves the nonprofit community through long-standing board and committee work, applying her audit and risk expertise to support mission-driven organizations. Karen is known for her focus on people, leadership, and building meaningful relationships that elevate the impact of internal audit. She brings clarity, empathy, and a modern approach to the role, something I know our listeners will appreciate. So, Karen, welcome to the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.
I'm super excited. And just so everyone knows, we did meet at the IAA International Conference in Toronto year, 2025. At one of the events and had a great discussion. And I thought, we must have Karen on the podcast. So here we are. And I typically start with a question about, how did you get into internal audit? Because most of us came in a roundabout way. I tend to go through the back door when I'm getting some things done. How did your path lead you here? And what's made you stay?
So I am the sociologist that became an internal auditor.
That is unusual.
Yes. I have a master's degree in sociology, a very quantitatively oriented program. So I learned statistics and statistical language, and I did a lot of writing, a lot of reports and things like that when I was in grad school. I decided I did not want to be an academic, so I stopped my career in sociology before I became a PhD, and took my statistics knowledge out into the work world, which in a few steps took me to a project management role at a bank in Baltimore. So you mentioned banking. And that project management role was around what we affectionately called Y2K. Everybody remembers that. At least people my age and our age remember that.
I was there overnight.
I was too, at a bank waiting to see if the ATMs would stop working. So we did the project. I was very involved. And my role on that project was helping all of our affiliate banks make sure they were ready for Y2K, which I was really auditing those affiliate banks, and the internal audit department was relying on a lot of what I was doing. And I built a great relationship with them. And that project came to an end, and the general auditor came to me and said, I have a job for you. And I said, okay. He goes, I have like a staff 2 auditor position, operational IT audit. You're perfect for it. I said, I'm not an accountant. What do you mean? And he's like, you don't need to be an accountant for this job. We'll teach you the accounting skills you need. You just need to bring your great relationships, your operational knowledge of this company and your IT knowledge of this company to the position. So I didn't have a better offer. So I said, what the heck? Let me give it a shot. And I have to say, Tracy, within 3-4 months, I knew I found my home. I was like, this job is perfect for me. Detail orientation, opportunity to really learn everything about the business, make value added recommendations. It was a great fit for me. And so that was the beginning of my career in internal audit. And after a couple of years at that bank, I then started my Big Four career. I won't tell you the rest of my career history, but we can probably go across that as we continue our conversation.
That's fantastic. And I've never met anyone. Well, there's one guest whose father was an auditor.
Okay.
And her first exposure to audit was her father being held at gunpoint in the jungle of their home country because he was auditing for the Americans at a difficult time in the country. So she's the only one I know who's ever like known audit since she was a child. Every other one of us, I think, has just found our way in and we're like,
Yeah.
this.
Yep. And look, the people who were in that department that I had to work with during the Y2K project were great people. I respected all of them. I got to know all of them. And I was like, seems like a good place to start my, start a new career path. So
Absolutely.
worked out
And
great.
I love that it only took you 3 months to figure it out. That's brilliant. So, how has having this sociology and statistics background shaped the way you approach internal audit?
Well, when I was in grad school in sociology, I was studying organizational behavior and gender, work, and family. So the two topics sort of melded together into, how do businesses work? How do women fit into business? So I think those things, though, that knowledge base from my grad school experience really informed how I looked at organizations. I looked at them kind of through a sociologist lens to some
Yeah.
extent. That has certainly evolved over time, but early on, I would say I was definitely, kind of it inspired my curiosity about the organization and about really getting to understand how organizations operated. Why did things not work the way they were supposed to when we found issues and things like that?
I think it's a beautiful combination of knowledge and skills to bring into internal audit because we need to understand how people think and how organizations work to be successful. So that leads me to my question, what do you love most about internal audit?
When I was at PwC, I loved the opportunity to work for lots of different clients and kind of put my stamp on each of them in a different way. But that I wasn't getting the fulfillment that I get now that I've had the opportunity to stay at a company for long enough to actually see the fruits of my recommendations come to actual performance, right? So, I really like that to see that, we find, we're going through a big S4 HANA implementation right now in my company, and we've been playing both an assurance and an advisory role through that project. And I've loved seeing how the recommendations that we've made sort of on the fly as we've been going through that have changed and improved the way the organization is addressing the topic. So seeing seeing the fruits of our recommendations actually come to success is really gratifying. I love that.
Okay. And so can we take that kind of into the team and how you kind of lead your team? How
Sure.
big is your team? And
So we're a team of 9, including me. I have a few folks here in the U.S., and I also have a team that's one person in Paris and several people in Bratislava, Slovakia. I
okay.
have sort of a center of excellence for our Sarbanes-Oxley compliance testing and some other kind of the routine internal audit work we have to do as a public company based there in Bratislava, which has been interesting because we also have operations and plants in that part of the world too. So they help with the internal audit work in those locations. But what I would say is that my team are people first and foremost, right? They're people before, and their family members and their friends and all that before they're auditors. Like I'm a heart-led leader, I would say is part of my kind of my mantra, right? Really leading from the heart, trying to understand each and every one of them, what makes them tick, and how can I best lead them so that they can be the most, best product of themselves they can be, but also how can I help their direct reporting managers do the same? So I only have 2 direct reports, and the rest of the team reports into those 2 people. And so I spend a lot of time with my 2 direct reports, trying to guide them and give them leadership skills and give them my point of view on how to how to really get the best out of everyone on our team. And each of them is a little bit different. So how we do that is definitely is different for each of them.
I'm totally with you on, everybody's different and we can't manage people all the same way. And making sure that we kind of coach or mentor the folks on our team is super important because I remember
Yeah.
when I was in internal audit, the senior auditor on site at a US owned bank in Canada, 27 years old. I had a team of 2 back then, and there were no management training, no coaching, no
Yeah.
no no way to learn leadership except by messing it
Trial
up,
and error.
basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So how does
Yeah.
your team feel then about that kind of, I would call it a supportive environment, but I don't know, how do they react to that kind of learning environment or supportive environment?
I think the fact that we have low turnover and really
Yeah.
high engagement survey scores for the department probably speaks volumes on that topic. But I think they appreciate it. I get good upwards feedback from them directly. Like we really live by transparency and respect. I mean,
I love that.
transparency up, transparency down, respect for each other, respect for our colleagues across the organization. And I think that shows in the way we operate as a function.
So that must balance well then, I think, with accountability.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's core to the us, having a high functioning audit team is that everyone is accountable for, what they have on their plate, for what they deliver. And I think they all have a very high level, they set high expectations for themselves because they
And
also know that I set extraordinarily high expectations for myself, but also for the department. And I think our audit committee chair sets high expectations of us. Our senior management, has as high expectations of us as well.
that's excellent. I think it really helps a well-performing team when they know the expectations and they get the support, whatever it looks like for that individual to help them achieve those expectations and that they're internally motivated is really what more can you ask for in a team? I don't know. I think that sounds pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So so if we kind of step outside maybe of your environment, and if you were to give advice to someone new to internal audit leadership, what would you want them to understand about leading with heart and with clarity?
That's a great question. For me, obviously, I feel like it works. Um, but it's not right. It's not for everyone, right? I mean, everyone needs to find their own leadership style and their own, kind of mantra their way of working. I would say, but if you always put people first and think about, how your actions reflect on yourself as a person, but also how they impact others, you can't go wrong, right? I mean, I think you'll definitely have a positive outcome from that type of approach.
I think, and that was the word that came to mind, and you said it was impact. I thought if we think about the impact of things before we take action or whatever that is,
Yes.
we have a better chance of being successful with everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, again, core value for us is respect. So respecting people and respecting their time, respecting, their point of view, respecting, that they come from a different culture, a different place, a different language, all those things. Those are all things that we as a team are constantly trying to continuously improve how we adapt to those. I mean, we're a global company with locations in several European countries, all different parts of the United States with
Cheers.
very different, different backgrounds, different points of
Mm,
view. I can't at last count. I think my team speaks like 11 or 12 different languages, which is phenomenal because we have, you know, uh, places that speak Spanish, places that speak French, places that speak Czech, places that speak Slovak, locations that speak a
yeah.
lot of different German, and we are representative. We have all of those languages representative within my team, which is really, really terrific.
That's absolutely brilliant. Language skills are just so important, I think, and sometimes we don't pay enough attention to what that can mean in terms of how we interact with people and what kind of misunderstandings can come through those conversations or those interactions. Because
Yeah.
I want to take the relationships question now, not within your team, but outside of your team within the organization, because I feel like from our previous conversation, we both recognize how important relationships are to the success of internal audit. I think when
Yes.
they say it takes a village, and in the case of internal audit, it really, really does. Like you've got to have good, strong relationships. So how do you approach building and maintaining relationships in such a large organization?
So we have a very structured approach to this in my department. We've kind of laid out the key relationships across the company and in a matrix, basically. So, and we've determined who is sort of the owner of that relationship. How frequently are we going to meet with them? Whether it's, a plant manager that we try to meet with twice a year, XCOM members I try to meet with all of them several times a year. Some of them I meet once a month. Some of them I meet quarterly. Some of them it's more ad hoc, but I still make sure there's a couple of touch points. Um, but the more important thing than having sort of a structured layout and determined relationships and holding people accountable to making sure they're doing that is making sure those meetings have value, right? So going to the meeting with talking points, things you want to share with the person, whether it's findings from an audit you think they would be interested in, or an article on risk related to their kind of part of the company that they might be interested in, or just specific things you need to ask them about, like, whether it's getting feedback on what they're hearing about how internal audit's doing, as we're trying to build our strategic plan, asking people like, how are you seeing internal audit in 5 years? Where do you think we should be going? How do you think we should be growing? And so going with a structured agenda and really valuing the people's time in the discussion and making it a valuable conversation, I think is super important too.
I think there's a lot of great points in there. Number one, I love this relationship matrix. I just did a webinar on communication strategies. And one of the things I talk about I talk about communication all the time, but I do talk about it as we need a strategy. So whether it's getting to know, for example, you and saying, how does Karen think? What makes her tick? What's important to her? Where are her pain points? It's about having strategy. So I love that for the department, for the team, you have a matrix. Now, not some people are going to say, oh, it's too much structure. We don't need it all. But to be honest, I personally think if we don't have great relationships with the business, or if they still see us in a negative light,
Yeah.
uh, having this matrix will help support the team to make sure what needs to happen does happen on a regular basis until we instill those habits inside,
Yep.
and know naturally how to do it. Because for some, it's not natural to go and have carry that relationship either before an audit or after an audit and 6 months from the audit and go and see how it's going. Or, I have an
Yep.
article that's important to you. I just think it's brilliant. I do.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. So many don't. And I even have some teams that I'm aware of that restrict people from talking to people at other levels. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Because they're going to have to talk to them during a closing meeting, and they need to be, they need to have confidence that they can present to a plant manager or to a member of the executive committee. And if you don't give them an opportunity to do that in a less threatening environment than a closing meeting around an audit that's got 10 deficiencies in it, then they're going to be super nervous. They won't be able to convey. But if they've already built a relationship with the person, I think it's hard for, you know, they can still be, it can still be a tough situation, but there's the human element already. You know this person, you've had a conversation with them. I know during COVID, we had to have our audits done remotely and nobody was going on site. I got back on site on the ground at for audits as fast as I possibly could following COVID, because there is no substitute for face-to-face conversation with people, breaking bread with them over lunch in the canteen on the camp at the manufacturing site, or going out to a nice dinner, in Bratislava. Amazing food there, by the way.
Yeah,
Can't
I've taught at the central bank there, actually.
have
So
you?
yeah,
Okay. So
long
they
time
have a foodie element there. Well, it's gotten even better, I think, in the
ago.
last few years. It's pretty amazing. But
No,
yeah,
it's lovely.
so
Lovely.
I think it's so important for people to have an opportunity to develop confidence in those types of interactions, so that when they're in a tougher, crucial conversations type of delivering bad news situation, they feel much more comfortable. And the person on the other end is like, I know that guy. He came to my plant. He's, I can't be too mean to him. He's, I
Yeah.
know he's a nice guy.
But I do think it's so important for our own development. So if I can speak as an auditor, like being able to have those interactions at different levels on a more informal basis, I
Yeah.
think would have been so helpful. Then I just remember walking into the payment processing department and people start turning around and walking the other way as you're walking into their bullpen. So
They're like,
life
oh
is
no, here comes the auditors.
so audit life has changed quite significantly since I was actually auditing, and it's good to see. But I also love to see that kind of supportive environment. Having been a Toastmaster, I teach communication skills all the time. I want chief audit executives like you to create opportunities for the team to step up right at the edge of their comfort zone. It might even
Yeah.
be outside their comfort zone one day.
Oh, yeah. Getting them in front of the audit committee.
Exactly. But how
Yeah.
great is that? I love it when chief auditors are like, can you go and present to the audit committee for me? Because it's a perfect opportunity
Yeah.
for
I
the
don't even have to pretend to be sick. I just line it up and put them in and have them speak to something that they worked on. I've had my lower level staff come and present the internal control over financial reporting report at the end of the year to the audit committee. And yeah, and I also, when I'm in Paris for our audit committee, and I'm actually flying there tomorrow night, um, I try to get the audit committee chair to come by and see whoever happens to be on location with me, and meet them. So sometimes I have people from the US have traveled with me to Paris because we're going on to, one of our other sites, and it just makes sense to have them meet some of the people in that office. Or I've had my whole team come to Paris for your, kind of annual planning. And so I always try to get the audit committee chair to come and kind of meet some of the folks on the team. It's a big deal for them. They love it.
absolutely, because normally we don't have that kind of contact with people at that level within the organization.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
so it's brilliant. So given all of the importance of relationships and how you kind of build and nurture relationships within the business and have your team do that, and you previously mentioned you have the S4 HANA project and you were doing kind of both advisory and auditing. I'm hearing the little devil on my shoulders going, what about independence? What about independence? So I can know that some people who are listening to this are going, how can the team maintain their independence without?
Yeah. I mean, we did our testing of user acceptance testing and data migration in full assurance mode. But we also, as we, saw, say, like the first, there was, we were doing our audit in phases, right? So, and the implementation in phases. So in phase one, which was like the first mock of data migration, we saw that the the documentation was just not meeting expectations. So we gave them a bunch of advice and recommendations on how they should correct it for the next round. But when it came to like the production go live and the actual, final movement of data and promotion of everything to production, we were in full assurance mode for that. So we hybrid, and I think it works. I mean, as long as you are showing that, when you're delivering a controls related assessment, that you did all of that in really in assurance mode and not in any kind of uh advisory mode. I think it works. Look, we're too small of a team, and these
Yeah,
types of
fair enough.
projects for me are far too important for the organization for us to be, too
Standoffish
yeah,
and way out here. And
yeah,
I think that's important because in the end, as internal audit, we still are part of the business. We have a bit of distance there for that independence,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't I don't believe that building relationships within the organization is going to compromise our independence.
I
And
don't either.
I feel like there's a happy place between advisory and assurance, but I know a lot of people don't agree
Yeah. Well,
in the end. But uh I say why not? I think we're all adults. So let's adult and we can
I
manage the
agree.
independence too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I feel like the approach we took, we can demonstrate, that we were in advisory mode when the project was sort of just, in its infancy and moving along. And when it came to the production final go live, we were not giving advice anymore. We had given the advice. If they didn't follow it, the results show what the results are, right? I mean,
Right.
it's telling.
Absolutely.
So
So I want to slip you into kind of advice mode again. So if you are sitting down and having conversation with someone who's on an audit team where they don't have really strong relationships into the business, um, what advice would you give them in terms of like a starting point?
let me start by saying that one of my mantras that I learned from one of my kind of, favorite things to say with my team, and I learned this from a PwC partner that I worked really closely with pretty much my entire 10 and a half years at PwC, which fantastic experience. And he remains somebody that when I need advice, I call him up or I go to him. But he told me perception is reality. So, what your stakeholders and your constituents perceive you to be, whether that's the police or whether that is an advisor or whether that is value added or whether that is,
Mhm.
somebody they don't ever want to be in the same room with, that is their reality, right? That is
Mhm.
their reality. And that is what you need to figure out, first of all, or hear and listen to understand what they are saying and not just listen to try to say, no, but I'm not being the police. I'm just trying to help. Listen to what they're saying, understand it, and based on that, come up with a strategy to try to change their perception of you. This is not easy, right? I mean, this is probably, people still have an impression of internal audit as, we're the police, we're just the compliance police, and we're not really value add. And if that's the perception you're still hearing, and I do still hear it even within my own organization, um, you have to work on that with the person who is not seeing you the way you would like them to see you.
Right.
Um, and so I think if people don't have great relationships within their organization, they need to think about why that might be. And is there a perception of them that they need to work on? That was where I was going with that, by the way.
Yeah.
Kind of came around in a long circle, but yeah, I think that's part of it, is to understand why don't they have good relationships? Is it something that internal audit is doing? Is it some perception of internal audit and what they're doing? Or is it that you're not a people person and you're having a hard time figuring out? And there's solutions for all of those, right? But you got to kind of
Definitely.
figure out what the root cause of that lack of relationships is and try to work on that.
Yeah, because I think in some organizations, it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on where they're located, because there are so many different pieces of the puzzle that have to fit together. And some of the teams that I've worked with are frankly in organizations that are 150 years old. So the perception of internal audit is
That's a
150,
long history.
and so if it tends to be on the negative side, it is a big job to turn that around.
It is.
Uh, and you do
One audit
some,
at a time, one site
right?
at a time,
One
one
person at a
relationship at a time. That's the only
time.
way to chip away at that. And look, I'm in manufacturing, and I've been in manufacturing for the last 12 years now, 12 and a half, or I don't know, 12, at least 12. So, and I will say that it is old school to
Yep.
some extent, especially the kind of manufacturing we do. This isn't your, super modern manufacturing kinds of facilities. Rolling metal is dirty, it's hot, it's like, so this is, we have a lot of old school culture, I guess I would
Mhm.
say.
Yep.
Plus, my company happens to be kind of made up of parts of a bunch of other companies that got
Purchased or
that
acquired.
got sold off and then re
Mhm.
kind of grouped together and eventually became Constellium. And so we're a patchwork of history and culture. And that can it's interesting and it's challenging for sure.
It's definitely interesting because it goes back to, I think even just in the last few months, there's that whole statistic. I don't know if it's 52% that think internal audit still doesn't add enough value. And it's just depressing
I
that we're
know.
still having this conversation, because the first time I had this conversation on a stage was in 2015. And
Yeah.
then, every year after that, PwC issued I can't remember exactly what it's called, but State of Internal Audit Union,
Yeah.
and it was always hovering around like 54% or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was in 2016, 2017. And we're still
Yeah.
we haven't moved the needle. How have we not moved the needle?
I know. Well, and I will say this perception or this view that internal audit can't be an advisor and perform assurance doesn't help to break that cycle, right? Because it's in that advisory work where we can really add value to the organization. I mean, and the context of this implementation for us, being able to get in there early and see how they were doing the project management and how they were documenting some of their work and giving them some guidance and advice formalized in written form, but formal, but advice, not like this is an audit issue, you need to respond to it, but giving them that and then letting them run with it. We got a much better product
Yep.
and a much better controlled implementation. And I feel like, that's where if we can do more of those types of projects, that's where the business is going to start to change their point of view on things.
And that just makes so much sense to me. So listen, I want to go from that into the internal audit engagement corner. Tell me what it is and how did that start?
We had the option of setting up a functional page and setting up like what we call a community page. And so we have on our company's intranet a community page, which we call the IA Engagement Corner. And, we use it to share information with the organization. And it's gotten some really good traffic. I think there was one month where it was the most visited community page, or the most visited, maybe the second most visited page for like senior leadership. So that's good. I'm really glad they're going to see what we have to say there. We do everything from sharing articles and podcasts and things that we found that are relevant to risk and audit and SOX and compliance and all those types of topics, to, putting summaries of audits out there with kind of anonymizing them and sharing them so that everybody can see, oh, if another site had these issues, we should check to see if we have them, right? So trying to use it as a way to also share that kind of information across the organization. And my team really likes, having the option to find an article and bring it to me and say, can we publish this? Can we put this out there? So there's only a couple rules. One is you can't put an article out there that requires somebody to have a subscription to read it. But
Yes,
other
that's a
than that, it's pretty fair game. So we do a lot of Big Four stuff. We do a lot of audit board related articles and posts, and other kind of free resource kind of things. So we stay away from, some of the news services that require subscriptions. But
yeah, that's always frustrating. When you're
it is
reading a LinkedIn
frustrating,
post, they're like, "Oh, I found this article," and then you can't get to the article.
right?
It's
Because you
not
don't have
helpful.
a
Not helpful.
proper
But
subscription to whatever it is,
right.
right?
But
Yeah.
I love this idea. I hope everyone's listening. I love this idea of having this way of communicating with the business where you think about what they can benefit from and then put it out there and let everybody know who internal audit is.
Yeah, and they can follow, people can follow the page. So we've done a bunch of different campaigns to have people, start following us so they get notified when we post new content. And
I
it's
mean, to
been
have
a slow go, but it's definitely gaining traction, and where you get more and more comments and more, responses and questions to the stuff we're putting out there. So that's great.
It builds and builds and builds. And I love that you can talk about followers for your internal audit department. I think that's wonderful. So I think it's one way. There's so many ways to change the perception of audit within the business and to have them know who you are, what you stand for, and it's not just a mission statement.
Yeah.
And this is one way to do it.
Yeah.
Definitely one way to do it.
Another one that we do is we do what we call kind of like road shows. And at the beginning of each year, we try to get onto the leadership team or the functional town halls and give us 15 minutes so we can tell you some of what we're planning to do this year, and give you another reminder of what our mission and our vision is. And it always generates great discussion. It always generates good feedback, good questions, and creates additional, like, we're not a black box. Internal audit is like, we're transparent. We will tell you what we're doing. We will share the results of what we're finding to try to help the entire organization. We don't need to audit every single site to let the site know what the things they need to be watching out for are. So
I love the approach that you have. It's all about communication.
Yes.
And transparency and authenticity and all those lovely words. Yeah.
We're trying. We are trying.
So let me do a switch here. I want to dive into AI in internal audit, because you've been a champion for bringing internal audit into the 21st century with AI, including speaking about it at the IIA International Conference in Toronto. What inspired you to start exploring AI's potential in internal audit, and where are you in terms of that with your team?
Yeah. So I think necessity is the mother of invention. So you have a small team and budgets are tight, and we wanted to do more with the same number of people. We want to be able to audit more. We want to be able to audit faster and try to, kind of find ways to do things more efficiently. And so I said, look, we are now in the age of artificial intelligence. Let's figure out how we can leverage this to improve our processes in the department and find ways to it would take a week to do research and develop an audit work program, and we can do that in a day now instead of 5 days. Or that's just an example, but
right.
And so what we've done is we've leveraged every resource we can find. So we co-source. So we've gone to our co-source partners and said, what are you seeing people do? Help us figure out how we can apply this to our department. So we've done that. Between me and the rest of the team, I think we've watched every webcast known to man on AI and its use cases within internal audit. We've gotten some training. We've just trial and error. And part of it is like we use Copilot, but we use a protected, company secure version of Copilot. Pretty actually basic, to be honest with you, but we just try to find different ways to use it. And we've built a little AI prompt library, and it's going pretty well. The team loves the opportunity and they like to share their successes. So we have, I have a setup for our department flash meetings or department staff meetings. We call them flash meetings here. Once a month during the internal audit focused one of those meetings, we're always talking about, lessons learned from previous audits. How have we done, something new with AI, share it with the department, that kind of thing. And it's worked well, and it's created some excitement and some traction. I think the next thing we'll do is in this next, I'm just in the process of doing my strategic plan for 2026 to 2030. And when we get that going, I think we're going to have some really defined initiatives to actually now start tracking if we're really time saving KPIs and that kind of thing. Right now, it's really just let's just go with it and do what we can.
That was I was going to ask you, do you find that you're saving time? Can you quantify it at all? Not that you have to tell me any quantification, but does it create time for your team to actually be able to focus on other things?
Yeah.
Like the critical.
They say it does. They say it does. Like the example I gave earlier, where we used to allocate, if we were doing a brand new topic and we needed to research it and look at policies and procedures and do all this stuff and try to come up with, a risk framework and a audit work program, that could take somebody on my team a week, and they're saying now that they could typically do it in a day. So that's huge, right? I mean, that means they have 4 more days to dig into the data analytics and start looking at, other things in other ways. So we're not measuring it, but the anecdotal evidence is that it's definitely creating efficiency. But I've told the team, I said, human in the loop is 100% the most important aspect of our using this tool. And so you can't just take what AI spits out. You need to spend time really scrubbing it, making sure that it makes sense to you. Don't, use anything without references and resources all attached, and so where you're getting where the tool is gathering this information from. So that's been an important aspect of it too. We spend a lot of time talking about how we're making sure on that aspect of it.
Because I think that human in the loop is really important. So even if you use it, I haven't asked you if you do, but let's say an audit team uses it to help craft findings or issues. You still have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that it makes sense, that it's the right evidence or the right test results or whatever that's included to make your point, right? To get it across the line.
Yep.
So I see
we usually write our findings ourselves initially and then ask AI to see if it could write it in a more concise way or a more professional way or that kind of thing, or make sure my grammar is good on this, because I normally write, in a different language, and English isn't my first language. So
there's some tricks and patterns that you can develop within the team to make sure that all gets the way it needs to be. So it saves time up front, perhaps, but you still have to have a little bit of time investment on the back end to make sure that it all makes sense.
Yep. Yeah,
Absolutely. My wish is that internal audit teams use AI well enough to save them literally 30, 40% of their time, so that they can actually be doing better, more, maybe not better, more, sometimes better reflection so that they can add more insight into the audit report. Because for me, teaching audit reporting, almost
Yeah.
day in, day out sometimes, this is what's missing because we do hindsight so well. We could be blindfolded, hands tied behind our backs, and we could talk about what happened, right? Like
Right.
that's not a problem. And when I'm looking at audit reports from new clients, the insight is almost always not to the
There.
level that I would like to see it. And I would
No.
also like to see us get to foresight. I rarely talk about foresight with the audit clients that I work with because we're still trying to get the insight down,
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that all of this AI gives us the opportunity for not only for the AI to see patterns that our human brain hasn't picked up, but that we
Yeah.
can add that into our own critical thinking to add more insight to the business. That's
Yeah.
my wish.
I think that's a great aspiration
We're not
for
there yet.
sure. No, we're a long way from that, but I do think, um, you know, my company is not on the cutting edge of this. We're using it for sure, but internal audit might be one of the leading users of it at this point, as far
That's
as trying to embed it into our day-to-day processes. But like I
yeah.
said, necessity is the mother of invention. So I was like, if they're not going to give me another staff person, we're going to create a staff person using AI.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's how AI is really, it's like a consultant, right?
yeah, yeah,
But, to have a conversation, I talk to ChatGPT all the time. And because I can get my thoughts across way faster than I can type my thoughts. So I can build context into my prompts like at 300 times the rate that I can do
that
it
you
if I'm
could type them in. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I give much more context, and context is what makes it work really, really well. So
Yeah. Yeah, you have to give it very thorough instructions and background and context and objective and what you're trying to do. And that's why I think when we found things that have worked and yielded the results that we expected, and they're kind of consistently, they become like, top of the prompt library. This is a really good one. You'll only have to change the subject that you're asking it to look up, and it should give you like a really good risk and control matrix as a draft, that kind of thing. So, and I'm part of another internal audit kind of network group. It's called the Internal Audit Collective. I don't know if you
mhm,
have heard of
mhm,
it, but um, they did we did like a project where a bunch of people who wanted to quickly build AI use cases each picked one they thought they could build, and we
mhm,
built it and we tested it in a couple of different instances of AI LLMs, including ChatGPT, Copilot Enterprise. I don't know, like the Google
there's Gemini
Gemini
and Claude
test.
and all.
Yeah, we tested it in like several different ones, and the ones that really, really worked, we published for everybody to use. So you did the work to create one, you got like 20 out of it. And it was like it was really a great, like, that is the way we should be operating as internal auditors, not just like trying to, help our own company, but let's help each other, right? Like,
Support each other.
I hate reinventing the wheel. I hate starting from scratch to do something I know one of my colleagues has already figured out. And so for me, like, one of the most valuable things that I do to make my department better is network and
Yeah.
be involved with these different people. Like, I try to meet every internal audit leader I can that's in the metals industry. I'm always like part of a women's CAE group. I joined this IA collective. Like, networking with you, I'm on this podcast. Like, all those types of things I think are just so valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's one side of AI is how we use tools. Do you actually audit AI?
We're doing a governance audit right now.
Okay.
So we're looking at how they've set up governance for approving new projects, monitoring the projects, monitoring the use of AI. And that's been interesting. I'm not gonna spill much about my company on
No,
that topic, but
no.
I highly it's a valuable exercise. It's a highly valuable exercise. And I think what you'll find is no matter where your company is in the journey, the governance won't quite be caught up where the company is from an execution perspective.
Right.
And given the importance, I think, of having very good governance around this to make sure, you're managing to prevent hallucinations and bias and all of the things that are the downsides of these types of tools. Governance is super important, and it's a good place to start.
Absolutely, because really it's the heart, right?
Yeah.
It's how the whole organization uses AI. So
Yeah. Yeah.
mm, good. Well, I hope it works out well. So let me turn to your nonprofit work because I know you have been volunteering for quite a long time on multiple nonprofit boards, one for 17 years. That to me is real commitment. Like that is really being of service from the heart.
Yeah. I grew up, this is how I grew up. I mean, my family just always helped other families, helped other people, always gave back. And so I think is in my DNA to
Mhm.
do that. But then, I had the good fortune of working at PwC for 10 and a half years, and they were very encouraging of all of us getting involved in the community and getting onto, a board or a committee or something supporting. And it was just dumb luck, but also good networking with some fellow internal audit colleagues in the Baltimore area that landed me on that Marion House board. And 17 plus years later, I have served in every leadership role. I have chaired, I think, every single committee except probably one. I was the very first chair of what has now become a 16-year annual 5K. And I chaired it the very first time, co-chaired it a few times, chaired it again, and I've been super involved. But if you understood that organization, you would probably commit 17 years of your life to it too. They help women that are coming out of some very rough situations really get back on their feet and become productive members of society, and independent productive members of society, and get their own. I mean, some of them have gone on to get PhDs and buy their own houses, and it's just amazing to see what that organization is able to do when you wrap women with all of the right resources they need to turn their lives around. So it's a really great organization.
What kind of advice would you give an auditor who has had this idea in their mind, like they would like to get involved in nonprofit work, but they're not really sure what's involved? Maybe they're nervous about making that
Yeah.
step.
Well, I would tell them that there's a lot of different paths that they can take. One is there's usually a some kind of organization in most communities that helps figure out what your skill set is, where your passion sits, and pairs you up with the right type of organization. But if you already know that you love dogs and you really want to help the local dog shelter, SPCA, or some special rescue or whatever, I would just go to their website and try to reach out to their executive director and say, hey, I might have some skills and I might be able to help, and don't know where to start, but I thought I'd call you. You can't go wrong there, or use one of those pairing up types of resources, I think. Look, what I will tell you is your background in process and control and risk and being able to give advice, and all of those skills are highly in demand by these nonprofit organizations. It's not their core competency,
Yeah.
but it's necessary. And I think I've brought to the table discussions around cybersecurity, discussions around insurance risk management, discussions around all kinds of different topics that probably wouldn't have gotten the airtime at the board if somebody like me wasn't sitting on the board. So
they
yeah,
can't really go wrong.
they can't.
Can't
They
make a
can't.
mistake. You just have to
No,
pick up
because you
the
can
phone and
start off
hang
small
out.
by just saying, can I get involved in your planning committee for your next gala or your next big event? And
Yeah.
if that kind of ends up being a good fit, you can see where there's like a board committee you could get involved in, because not all the members of the board committees are board members. Some of them are other outside members. Um, and just, you'll find your way. You'll find your way if you have the interest. You'll find your way, and the right organization will find you.
Perfect. So listen, let's take a moment, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on your career so far.
Okay.
What are you most proud of at this stage of your career?
I would say that people that I worked with when I was a manager at PwC, how many years ago now? 11, probably 16, 17 years ago, still reach out to me for advice. It's the most gratifying thing to have someone who is now very seasoned in their career, is even maybe in my role somewhere, but sees me post something on LinkedIn and they think about me and they're like, she's the person I need to reach out to get advice on this XYZ topic that I'm dealing with, or I'm thinking about changing careers, or I'm thinking about leaving this company and I just needed somebody to talk to. And I think that's probably happened like 3 or 4 times in the last 18 months for me. And it makes me feel so good because it's not like I have regular interaction with these folks, but the fact that they still think highly enough of me and they think I would be able to give them good advice, is just the most, it just makes me feel really good. Makes me feel
That's
like I've
nice,
done something right in my
right?
career as a manager, a leader, a colleague. So yeah.
And I think, as you're talking, it makes me think of there's one or two female managers that I had back in the day. And so listening to you, I thought about them, and I thought it actually feels good to me that I know that even now I can still reach out
Yeah.
to both of them. So I think
Yeah.
hopefully it feels good on both directions,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So now if we fast forward into the future a little bit and you're thinking about the day that you might leave the profession, um,
Yeah.
what impact do you hope to have made, either on the people or the organization or even on the profession?
Anytime I move on, and whether it's retiring or leaving a former company, I want to feel like I've left the company better than it was when I got there. So that the things that I've done and the audits that I've led and the recommendations and advisory work we've done for the organization over the years has led the company to be better controlled, better managed, better processes than it was when I got there. And so that's always my goal. And it's great when, I left my former company and the CEO literally called me in my car on my way home after dropping my PC off on my very last day and said, I couldn't come and say goodbye to you because I would have been a puddle. But thank you for leaving this company better than it was when you got here. And that's the greatest compliment you can get in this kind of position. Yeah.
That's something, Karen. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's baby steps, and not everything we do seems earth shattering.
Mm.
And none of it is in its infancy and in its individualness. But when you think about all the recommendations you've made that have been implemented, that have improved, that, it can be,
Feels good, doesn't it?
it does feel good. It does feel good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Lately, I've been very involved in the advisory board for my former college that I got my master's degree from.
Nice.
And it's great to go back and tell them that, you know, you can be super successful coming out of this college with a master's degree in sociology and not necessarily be a sociologist. Although I'm always a sociologist at heart. I think I'm a studier of people for sure. So.
And I think that really adds value for someone in your position, is just to be a studier of people and organizations and really understand how they tick.
Yep.
On that note, Karen, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. It's been real fun. It's been a joy. And thank you for sharing all of your expertise and your perspectives with us.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast. We'd love for you to stay part of our growing community, so subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're enjoying our content on platforms like iTunes or Spotify, a quick 5-star rating from you would mean the world to us. It's a small action that supports our mission immensely. Don't forget to explore the show notes for various links and join our vibrant community on all our social media platforms. Your interaction and support play a crucial role in amplifying the voices of inspiring women in audit and spreading their inspiring stories even further. Thank you for being a part of our journey, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Inspiring Women in Audit podcast.